webheads, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back to give you another list video. Today we're going to be talking about where to start reading Spider-Man. And admittedly, I have covered this topic in the past in older videos, whether that was long-form content or shorts, but I think with a perennial character like old Spidey, it's always good to revisit this, maybe mine new places for people to jump in, perhaps for the very first time. To that end, I did update the list a bit, choosing some contemporary choices as well this time, and I narrowed it down to about 5 quick stops. I can't wait to talk about one of my favorite characters today, but before we do, I'd just like to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for them in the video description, and if you see anything on that site you like, you can use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering, and now on with the show. First on this list, of course, I have to go back all the way to the very beginning. In the Silver Age of comics, we're going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. But this is really just an oversized collection that collects the first 40 to 50 issues of Spider-Man, beginning with his appearance in Amazing Fantasy 15. And if you are completely new to comics or new to Spider-Man or any of that, these issues written in the early 60s do feel a little bit dated as far as storytelling mechanics go. We have a lot of exposition, kind of dumping, things like that, but there is something timeless about these works as well. And for any fan of Spider-Man, maybe you've only seen him in animated series, video games, or movies, there is something in these core beginning issues that really distill down the essence of who this character is. It was baked in right from the beginning with this incredible work from Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and again, I just think these issues are absolutely timeless. What most people who speak about Spider-Man know is that Spider-Man has one of the best rogues gallery of villains in the history of comics. I put him right up there with Batman as just one of the most lively and memorable villains. We also have an incredible supporting cast of characters, and we have kind of a conflicted, kind of tragic character in the person of Peter Parker, which especially in the early 60s was a bit unique at the time for superhero comics. The fact that he's also a teenager at the time and not some kind of sidekick character, it's just a real innovation in this space. And whether or not this art style is for you, there is something that absolutely should be said for the incredible Steve Ditko and how he co-created this character. I personally love the character models we get of not only Spider-Man, but of Peter Parker and that supporting cast of hero and villain characters. I think the character models have something realistic about them, down to their expressions. This omnibus edition, which again is this oversized hardcover book we're looking through, is one of the oldest. In fact, I think it is my first omnibus in my collection. I've gone on to collect a good handful of these, but this one is still one of my favorite cherished gems. I'm not sure if this edition is in print currently, but hopefully you can find it in secondary markets or find other reprints or even digital available. Because I think for someone that wants to understand where Spider-Man came from, there is no better place to go than all the way back to the very beginning. So my first recommendation will always be going back all the way to the Silver Age of comics with Amazing Fantasy 15 and the early issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. Next on this list is the Ultimate Spider-Man run by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley. To showcase this run, I have the first omnibus edition here as well, and this collects the first 39 or so issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. And right from the jump, I do want to differentiate what makes this run special. It is set in a different part of Marvel's multiverse, so it's not in the mainstream 616 universe in which so many of the classic Marvel characters are set. It is set in a side universe that I believe was kicked off right around the millennium, so 2000 give or take, but this is a real relaunch, reboot from the very beginning Spider-Man title. That means you don't need to know anything about Spider-Man to enjoy this incredible run. The run itself lasted, I think, 150 or 160 issues. We do have a little bit of a different artist toward the end, but Mark Bagley did pencil a staggering amount of this run. For those that don't know, Mark Bagley was also a longtime Spider-Man penciler for The Amazing Spider-Man as well, so we definitely have some kind of pedigree here for Spider-Man. This is also one of my first Spider-Man titles I encountered. I think after The Amazing Spider-Man I just spoke to, this was one of the first runs I really got hooked on. I read the first maybe 130 or so issues of Amazing Spider-Man straight, but then I kind of went over to this as my big ongoing title for some time, and I still think it really has held up against the test of time in the maybe decade or two since it released. What Bendis and team were able to recreate with Spider-Man was really capturing the essence of this character, but revamping and modernizing it for modern readership, which at that time again was the early 2000s. I love that we had so many fan favorite characters and moments, but sometimes spun out in a new way, again in that kind of multiverse, parallel universe kind of way. If you have no background with Spider-Man, again, you can enjoy it here. You even have the Spider-Man origin story, which initially was only, 10 pages or so, stretched out across the first full 6-issue arc of this series. I really, really loved it. It's super heartfelt and dramatic, and that just kicks off where these creators go from there. But again, for a brand new reader, this is a great way to jump onto Spider-Man, and for returning Spider-Man fans, it's fun to again see these beloved characters or story arcs kind of refreshed and mixed in new ways. I know that was something that kept me really engaged throughout the whole run, and Marvel has released this entire run in omnibus format. We have 4 volumes in this run here following the Peter Parker Ultimate Spider-Man along with the Death of the Ultimate Spider-Man omnibus, but there is a volume 5 of this solicited as well. But anyway, it's a great format to try to pick this series up in. They also have, I think, paperback modern epic collections that are coming out. Anyway, I definitely recommend seeking out Ultimate Spider-Man. Okay, next up, admittedly a controversial choice, but I'm going to go for it. We're going to be looking at Spider-Man Brand New Day era, and to collect that, I have the Spider-Man Brand New Day Omnibus Volume 1. This is really a relaunch to the Spider-Man book, and again, it's a great place for new readers to jump on board. Now, this is a very polarizing time in Spider-Man's history because it takes place after the events of the JMS run on Spider-Man, which is one of my favorite runs on the book as well, but it had an ending that really messed with long-standing relationships and continuity in a way that alienated a lot of longer-term fans. However, I would make the argument that for newer readers who want a on-road to Spider-Man, this is actually a really refreshing and modern place to start as well. So unlike going back to the 60s or even the early 2000s, this is another modern kind of grasp at Spider-Man. It takes place in that mainstream 616 universe, so this is the proper Spider-Man. And like I mentioned at the end of the previous comic, we had some long-standing relationships shift and some status quo changes for Spider-Man. So when you jump on this book, it really is a fresh start, or yes, you guessed it, the titular Brand New Day. Another reason I bring this up is because these omnibuses have been releasing the last year or so. I think there's a volume 2 coming out beginning of 2026 if I'm not mistaken, but it's just a fun place to start. And with the new MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man film titled Brand New Day, I know that this is a book that's going to get a lot of viewership coming up, so it was fresh on my mind. I think again why I want to recommend this for newer readers is because based on those status quo changes, it's designed to be an accessible on-ramp to new readers. You don't need to be bogged down with decades of continuity. Knowing the basics is enough to start. And even at the beginning of this book, we have a kind of what you need to know about Spider-Man portion, which again brings you up to speed very fast. And we do have a lot of great creators during this period as well. Unlike some comic book runs that have a, singular writer and illustrator, this run really has a huge think tank of different writers and pencilers, artists of different kinds. So you have kind of a medley of incredible comic book talent. We have a lot of great story arcs here. Again, maybe not a ton that are considered timeless classics, but certainly, like I said, a great on-ramp for new readers who want a feel for the character in a way that they can access without being bogged down by too much continuity. I'm also just personally a fan of a lot of the artwork in this book. I think it's just gorgeous and gripping. And again, reading a book that's not steeped in like decades old history or storytelling mechanics, it does feel pretty well paced, it's zippy, and it's just a lot of fun. Anyway, definitely worth considering for newer Spider-Man readers, Spider-Man Brand New Day. And hey, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing comic book list videos like this, comic reviews, unboxings, and more. Thank you for considering. Now let's keep this list right on going. Okay, next on this list is also a very modern choice, and that is Spider-Man by Nick Spencer. Now, this is the Spider-Man by Nick Spencer Omnibus Volume 1 of a 2-volume set, collecting the entirety of this creator's run. And I will admit right from the jump, I am still personally making my way through this run. However, with what I've read of it thus far, I can safely put it on this list for a couple notable reasons. Similar, though not as extreme as the Brand New Day entry I just spoke to, this Spider-Man era by Nick Spencer does establish a new status quo for our favorite wall-crawling hero. We're really quickly brought up to speed on where he's at in his personal relationships, in his socioeconomic standing, and where he is as a hero, of course being Spider-Man. The first arc is even called Back to Basics, I believe, and that's really what we have here. We have the return of a lot of fan-favorite villains and supporting characters for our hero, and I really do think that that is what makes a Spider-Man book so very grand, is the supporting cast of characters and villains, and of course the inherent tragedy that Peter often struggles with. But with that, we also have a lot of good humor, levity, and gorgeous art in this book in particular by the great Ryan Ottley. If you're a fan of Invincible, this is certainly a similar art style you'd probably recognize. Being a fairly modern run as well, at the time of this recording, you can still pretty easily find this run in either paperback or an omnibus edition, or digital of course, but this is a really fun read. I also wanted to recommend this because this run went on for a little while. Like I said, 2 of these massive omnibus editions to collect the whole of it, and I think that if you sunk your teeth into a Spider-Man run that you enjoyed, especially as a newer fan, it's nice when that run goes for a while and you can enjoy it for a bit, you can savor it, and so for all these reasons, I thought that this would be a really fun recommendation for where you can start reading Spider-Man. And perhaps the jury is still out if any of the story arcs in these collections will stand the test of time and be considered a modern classic, but I still think there's an argument that this is a great modern run that was designed to be very accessible and give you a good sampling of, again, a lot of these quintessential and important Spider-Man characters, both heroes and villains. And being a fan of Invincible and Ryan Ottley in general, the art throughout this book is also just absolutely gorgeous, vivid, and just jumping from every page and panel. I am curious in the comments section, if I had people that are more seasoned Spider-Man fans, what did you think of this Nick Spencer era? Again, I'm still personally making my way through, but with what I've read, I still think I can put it on the list. But let me know where you weigh in. Do you feel differently about this era? Are you a fan of it? I'd love to get more conversations going about that in the comments section below. So far, personally, I am having a blast, and I think this is a great place for new readers to start. Okay, and rounding out our list today, we have the new Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto. To showcase this, we have the first trade paperback edition, which includes, I believe, the first 5 or 6 issues of this currently ongoing run. That's right, we don't have any deluxe edition hardcovers or omnibus editions, I just have this paperback for now, although I do believe a Volume 2 paperback has already been released as well. I gotta get shopping for that one. But why I think this is a really good place to start for Spider-Man, kind of like the other Ultimate Comics run, which is unrelated. This is also set in a Marvel Ultimate Universe, though this is a different Marvel Ultimate Universe. So you can treat it kind of like the previous one, where we have just kind of alternate history, a whole new status quo, and that's really what we have here. Why I like this is that it gives us, again, a fresh origin from the beginning kind of setup for this character. character. There's also the novel approach that this character's aged up a little bit. We have kind of a 30s or even early 40s something Peter Parker here, who becomes Spider-Man much later in life, even after the point where he actually has a family of his own. Because of that, as a, grown adult 30-something myself, I like to see some of the conflicts and struggles he has as a family man, and perhaps you're in a similar demographic, and in that way, maybe this is a good on-ramp for you. I also am a huge fan of the creators attached to this book. Jonathan Hickman has written some of my favorite modern comics of all time. I'm looking at his Fantastic Four run, his run on Avengers, and so much more. Marco Checchetto is also a great and prolific comic book artist that I've enjoyed in the pages of Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky, to be sure, and he absolutely brings his A-game here as well with this incarnation of Ultimate Spider-Man. I think this is a little bit interesting to put on the list, as it is still a ongoing title, but why I think that could be fun for a lot of newer readers as well is sometimes it's good to not only read the classics, but read something that people are still actively engaged in, discussing in this comic book space or niche, and to that end, I think that this is a really good contender. Starting from its own issue 1, bringing on its own lore and kind of world building in this very first volume, I just think it's a really fun title that's still actively being discussed today as it's coming out. I've had a blast with it, and kind of like the previous Ultimate Spider-Man as well, it's fun to see these creators tackle these fan favorite characters or maybe even character moments in new and fresh ways. I think that this is a really novel approach, and so far everything I've read of it I have really adored. It absolutely has my recommendation, and I do think it is fun for new people trying to jump on a modern Spider-Man book in particular that really has some substance to it, has something to offer, and is just pure entertainment from end to end. Don't miss out on the new Ultimate Spider-Man by Hickman and Checchetto. Okay, and with that, we're going to go ahead and round out the list today of where to start reading Spider-Man. Of course, there are so many arguments of where you can jump in on this incredible character. Works like Spider-Man Blue by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale is another one high on my list. I am a huge fan of the run by JMS I mentioned earlier as well. The list goes on and on. Anything by David Michelinie as well from the 90s era Spider-Man. Oh, there's just so many I could have thrown on this list. I tried to mix it with some good kind of safe picks along with a lot of modern choices for people that are maybe more geared to modern comic book storytelling. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little list. I'd love to hear in the comments section what you thought about this video. Do you like some of my choices? Do you dislike them? What would you recommend, particularly if you are a more seasoned Spider-Man comic book fan? I'd love to have the comments read as a great kind of what to read comic book listing for Spider-Man. That would just really make me happy. Or just general Spider-Man discussion. Let's go ahead and hear it over in the comments, and thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, that comment we talked about, and maybe share it with a friend. Thanks, it really helps out. Bye.